Hello creative friends, it is Susie from the Speckled Loon. If you are a returning subscriber, welcome back to my channel. If you are here for the first time, welcome. I am so glad you're here. If you would consider subscribing to my channel, I would appreciate it. And if you're watching and like what you see, if you can give this video a thumbs up, that would be great. It just tells YouTube you like what you're seeing, and it will give you more of the same. So what we are doing today is working with our Made with Love DIY decor kit. It is inspired by my time growing up on the farm. This time of the year we did a lot of baking, taking treats out to the workers in the field that were harvesting the crops, and it just brings back special memories of me with my mom in the kitchen and fun in the summer. And that's what we are doing today. It's a 1-year anniversary of introing our DIY decor kits. And that means I've added lots of special extra little goodies. Instead of 5 projects, we have 9, and there's a dozen different little items. So without further ado, let's get started and let's get creative and start crafting. Let's go. Let's go over everything you are going to receive in your kit. The kit comes to you unfinished in a little box like this with instructions. And all your projects are individually packaged in these little bags to keep all the pieces and parts together. If you're missing anything, you can email me down below and I will get that out to you. But once you complete the kit with your own paint and glue, you're going to have something similar to this. And I'm going to go over the items. There's a little tobacco basket sign with a stand, a mini chef gnome, a double-sided garland with eat on one side and utensils on the other, a little rolling pin, a couple of little cutting boards, and then this house shelf, which is kind of the centerpiece of this whole kit. It's got 2 little interchangeable signs that hang off the front with little brackets or hooks that are included, and 3 different little window inserts that you can change up top, which are really cute and add some different dimension to this kit. And like I said, it's our 1-year anniversary, so I added extra projects in. We normally have 4 or 5. We've got about 9 on this one. And the design and display options are endless with this, with the different combinations. I hope you like it and enjoy the anniversary edition of our kit. As mentioned before, all the items in this kit come to you unfinished and unassembled, so you can add your own color of paint. These are just the colors I used. I used this black Waverly paint from Walmart. The red I used was a home decor red from Joann's, I believe, but you can get it at Michael's and Hobby Lobby too. The brown I used was actually this antique wax, again Waverly from Walmart. I used some yellow, which was this King's Gold apple barrel that's about 60 cents per container. And then I used the white chalk paint from Waverly Walmart as well. I use these foam brushes on the larger pieces. On the smaller pieces, you can use small art brushes. For stenciling, I use a stiff bristle brush on the left. And then you can also use these teeny tiny flat Q-tip swabs for applying paint. I'll show you how to do that. Or cut up makeup wedges. Those work great as well. And one of the easiest things to use are paint markers. And if you don't have paint markers, you can use Sharpies as well. But these are great for the small words and little parts, and you don't get paint all over the sides. You also will need some scissors, a little bit of painter's tape here and there to help with some things. And then for glue, you can get glue in these little 2-packs from the Dollar Tree. There is this super glue or a green one that is a gel super glue. Either one works great. 1 little bottle is all you need. I use the Starbond Thick. I will link it below. It's just what I use because I put together so many pieces when I'm making things for my craft fairs. You're going to want some makeup wipes or baby wipes or wet paper towel for cleanup. And you're going to need some little clamps to clamp everything down. If you don't have those, you can just use clothespins. Our first project is this adorable mini chef gnome. And this is what it looks like all made up. It comes with the hat, the nose, the braids, and the little feet, and a base, and everything goes on that base, just like a little jigsaw puzzle. I'm going to show you all the techniques that I use on this particular project, and then I'm going to repeat a lot of these techniques throughout. And the first thing I do, just to make painting small items easier, is I go ahead and I take some painter's tape and I put it upside down or sticky side up on some paper plates, and I just tape it down. The first two items we are going to paint are the hat and the little body, part of the body of the chef gnome. I'm doing those in white, and I start in the middle with a little bit of white chalk paint on a foam brush, and I just go out from there, trying not to get it over on the edges. You'll see me cleaning up the edges later, and I'll talk about that. But after I get one coat on, and I do two coats actually, but after the first coat, while it's still wet, I take a toothpick and I run it through all those little lines that are on the hat. It just gives it more definition and makes it look like a cleaner look, and there's no globs of paint. And like I said, I do two coats. For her body, I go very lightly over those engraved or etched in buttons. If I get any paint in there, I'll just use a Q-tip or a toothpick to get it out, or if it's really bad, a black Sharpie that I'll just color over. But I just do two coats on her as well. And if I get any on the side, I'm taking one of my little makeup wipes or my wet paper towel or baby wipe, whatever the case may be, to clean up the edges. I just like the edges to have that dark look, and I don't like paint going over on the side. To me, it feels sloppy, but it's your project. So if you'll notice on the hat, there's a little etched in area where the heart needs to go. You don't need to color in the lines, but I just took a red paint marker and colored in with that. So now I set the large parts aside, and I'm going to do the braids, the shoes, and the little nose. For the little nose, I used a very light pink, but really you could just leave the nose natural as well. It's just kind of a tannish color anyway, but you could use whatever color you want for the skin tone. I use black markers on the shoes, and then for the braids, I'm going to show you how I use that craft acrylic paint that I have called King's Gold, and I use a flat cotton swab that I got from Walmart as a paintbrush. You could use markers on this, but I thought I would show you this technique. So if you don't have paint markers, this is a great way to apply your paint on small areas without getting it all over. And I do two coats of the yellow because yellow never covers great. And while I'm doing that, afterwards, there's little etched in areas here, crease lines, whatever you want to call them. I do take my toothpick and I go through there. I let this dry between, and then I do a second coat, and then there's a little flower detail on the bottom that we will use our markers to color in. So I used my red marker, and this marker from Arteza, which I will link below. This set has nibs that have a fine tip on one side and a thick tip on the other. You just flip them with tweezers, and now I have the fine tip, and I'm coloring in that little area for the flower with the red. When you're done using that fine tip, you just flip it back to the other tip, the bullet tip I guess you'd call, and use those tweezers and then go on to the next. There is a little dot in the center of this flower, so I take a brown marker and I do the same thing where I switch out the bullet tip for the fine tip, and I just do a little dot in the middle. I don't have a steady hand to do that with paint, so I prefer to use markers. If you have a steady hand, just use paint. That's fine. So I'm just putting away the brown marker now, and now I'm taking out the white paint pen, priming it, and I'm going over the little detail lines on the nose and the shoes to just give them a little more dimension. And the last thing I'm going to do for the gnome is a dry brush technique. I'm taking my brown paint and I'm just dabbing it off on the paper plate, so I barely have any on the brush. And I'm taking an old stencil brush. It's got very stiff bristles, and I'm rubbing it all along the outer edge of the hat. And then I'm going to take it and kind of go along the little lines there. And all that is doing is giving it kind of a shadowing effect to give a little more dimension to that hat. And I like the end look of it. I'm going to do the same thing to the hair just to give it a little more dimension on those braids. And I don't even put any more paint on. You just need very little paint for this effect. And now it's time to put our gnome together. So I've got all my pieces and parts laid out, and before I apply any glue, I like to do a dry fit. So I take the hat and put it on there, and you can see where that cutout looks great, where the heart is going to be. The little left and right braids, and I want to make sure I have the right one on the correct side and the left one on the correct side. And then there's adhesive backing on the little shoes. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to apply the glue on the back of the hat and a little bit on the unpainted area of the gnome. And I am going to go ahead and take the hat in one hand and the base in the other. And before I press them together, I line them up and make sure it's all lined up edge to edge correctly. Then I take my little clamps, and if you don't have those, just use clothespins. And I just let them kind of hold it together for me to make sure I get a good bond with my glue. Then I'm dry fitting the braid again, and I'm going to do the one on the left hand side first. And then I just do 1 or 2 drops of it, and if I get glue that comes out, I just take a toothpick or a Q-tip and run it along and pick up that extra glue. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, on the right hand side braid. 2 or 3 little drops of glue is all I need. Line it up with the hat, line it up with the edge so you have a nice clean edge, and then put a clamp on that. And next is the nose, and so I do a dry fit on that just to make sure it fits in there okay. And I'm going to go ahead and put 3 or 4 little drops of glue on the nose. I probably overdo it on the glue, but that's fine. It's going to stay together. And the last thing is to just remove the adhesive backing on the little shoes and center them in the middle bottom of the gnome. And once you have that, your mini chef gnome is complete. Let's take a look at our completed gnome. I hope you like it as much as I do. Our next project is this set of mini cutting boards. You are going to receive everything to make this Eat and Home mini cutting board. The Eat one has all the little letter placement outlined, and the letters have an adhesive backing, and it has a little string. The Home is same thing. It's got adhesive backing on it, and there's a place etched out where you need to apply. You don't need any glue for this because everything has an adhesive backing on this little project. So I am going to take my small little letters and I am going to color them with markers, just like we did on our gnome for the heart. I like using the markers for these small things. There I did the E, and there Eat is all done. I did that in black. For Home, I'm using a silver metallic, and I did do 2 coats on that because the silver is just a little bit light and the coverage isn't that great, so I like to do 2 coats. So for each cutting board, I did a different finish. I did white with the brown distressing around it, just like we did on our chef's hat. And it's, again, got the little area where we're going to run our toothpick through. So again, same thing, just very light coat, and I do 2 coats of it. And I have this sped up because it's very repetitive and you don't need to see me painting every little bit. But there I drag my toothpick through. I'll let that dry. I'll do the second coat. Your little etched out area is kind of covered by the paint, but you'll still be able to see it when you need to place it. I did forget to color the little heart earlier, so now I'm just taking a red paint marker and putting a coat of red on that heart. I just need 1 color on that. It covers great. 1 coat, excuse me. So for the brown Home cutting board, this is MDF wood. It doesn't have a wood grain to it, so we are going to make a faux wood grain. And whenever I do that, I start with like an ochre color or a bronzy color. This was a bronze paint marker, something with a little bit of orange tint to it, basically. Then I go over it and just layer and dry brush on brown. I'm just using that brown antique wax, but brown paint is fine. Back and forth, wiping off the excess until I get the look that I feel looks good. And then the last step I do is I take a little bit of white paint and I dry brush that on with just a dry brush, or the brush that I've been using, the sponge brush, with just a little bit of white paint. But I just like a very dry brush look on it. And that kind of just gives it that aged wood look that you would find on a farmhouse type thing. And I like how it ends up. So now I'm just doing that same little distressing technique with dry brushing the brown all around that beat and a little bit in the middle, but not overly much. I don't like it was out in mud, but I just want a little bit of an aged look to it. Then I'm going to go ahead and remove the adhesive backing on the letters. And if you see it go out of frame, I have very bad vision. I basically have the vision of a fruit bat, so I like to line it up really close and look in and get it lined up before I show you on the screen. So that is me doing that so my head doesn't pop in all the time. But basically, you'll line up your letters on those little outlines that are there. They're barely visible through the paint, but just visible enough to line them up. Then you string your string through, or loop the string through the hole, and you're done. On the home, same thing. I'm just lining that up and then pressing that down. It's got that little etched mark as well. Put the heart wherever you want, or leave it off. That's fine. For the string on this one, I gave you a little bit more string. I want you to fold it in half, take the loop and put it around the back, take the other end of the string through the loop, pull it tight, and then you're just going to wind it around like you're winding a cord around it. And when you get up to the little hole, you will string the ends through the hole a couple of times. And then I flipped it around and I tied a double knot on the back and then trimmed off the excess. And that is how I finished off the little home cutting board. So now, once you do that, these two projects are complete and ready to put in with the rest of your decor. They make great accents year-round to all your small mini or tier trade decor. It's time to start making our mini tobacco basket. I have to say that slow. It's a tongue twister. This is what the finished product looks like. It's a little basket, tobacco basket, with a mini cutting board and heart cutout in it. And those come apart, so they are easy to paint. It's got a frame and a basket, and the frame has an adhesive backing on it, and it comes with a little stand and some string. So to paint this, I'm going to start out on the cutting board. I'm going to do the heart in red. I'll do that white with the distressing technique on the cutting board, and we're going to speed this way up because, again, it's repetitive, but I just want to show you what I did and you'll get the gist of it. So I'm taking my white, I'm going all the way around on the cutting board. The only thing I'm being careful here is I don't want to get a lot of white paint on the inside of that heart area because I want that cutout to fit in perfectly and not be hindered by some dried paint. So clean that up and do 2 coats. Now I'm going to take my Q-tip, that flat one like before. I'm dipping it into my brown antique wax and going all the way around, and then I'm wiping it with a baby wipe. If you don't have the antique wax, you can just do this with watered down brown paint or just brown paint and then wipe it off with a baby wipe as well. I just like the translucent effect that this antique wax gives. I'm doing the same thing on the basket portion, and then I'm taking my Q-tip and running it down the little etched in lines on there to get any globbed in paint or antique wax. Doing that same distressing technique around the outside of that little mini cutting board, setting that aside, and now everything's painted, dried, and it's time to put things together. So I am taking that backing off the frame, and this adhesive is a one and done. You really want to make sure you've got everything lined up really good. I put both bottoms and line them up on the table on a flat surface and then press them together, and then it's in there. For the little cutting board, I'm going to loop the string toward the top through just like so. And then I'm going to place that right in the middle so the string can kind of be up against an opening in that basket, and you'll see why in a minute. So I'm putting just a tiny few drops of glue on the back of that cutting board, lining it up in the middle where I wanted it. And then while that glue is drying, I'm feeding that string through. And I'm tying a very small knot at the top, just making sure that my cutting board stays in place because my clamps don't reach in there. And I'm just tying a square knot at the top. And then I am going to put a few drops on the back of the heart, place that in the cutout area of the cutting board, and this project is complete and ready to put on the little stand that is included to rest next to your house shelf. Our next project is fairly quick and easy. I say that because it's our mini rolling pin, and if you don't want to do anything at all to it, you can leave it be. I chose to paint mine and add a little string. If you're going to use a string, I suggest you cut it in half equally so you have it for either end and just set it aside for later. How I finished mine off was I took my brown antique wax. You can do the same thing with your paint. And I painted around the end of each handle. If I went a little over, no biggie. I'm going to be painting the middle anyway. I took my wet makeup remover or wet baby wipe and I wiped off the excess, leaving it with that stained look on either end. Then I took my white paint, put a little on my brush, and just twirled the little rolling pin around in a circular motion and just kind of feathered it up toward the edge where I wanted it to blend into the brown, not worrying about being too terribly exact and neat. And that's what you have for the end result of the painting. Then I went ahead and I took the string and I basically folded it in half, looped it through, put that end through the loop, and got it tight around the handle. You'll see what I mean here in a second. So I pull that tight, and then I just finish it off by doing a little shoelace bow in the front, adjusting the ends of the bow, and then taking my ends, once I have the bow to the size that I want, wrapping those ends around the back, making a double knot and cutting off the excess. And then I repeated that on the other side, so the bows were both at the top or facing the same way. And that is all there is to this mini rolling pin project. I always add a little bonus decor to each project. What that is I have some extra space on the cutting sheet that I do. And this means I added a couple extra hearts that I can color red and an extra set of little flatware for you to tuck in and accent anywhere on your tray. I just used my silver marker and I did 2 coats on all the flatware. I used the red marker for the little hearts and 2 coats on the silver. And finally, what I did to tuck them in is I wrapped a little piece of Scotch tape around the end of it to group it all together, and it makes a perfect quick little accent to your decor. In all of my kits, I like to include a wood beaded garland, and this kit is no exception. This one has a double-sided tag on it to give it some extra versatility. It's going to include the tassel string and the ribbon and assortment of beads. Yours will be similar to this, but could be just a little different. The little utensils, and then the little leaves that are on there are adhesive backed. I use silver on the utensils, black on the word eat, and green on the leaves, and white chalk paint on the tag. The first thing we are going to do is just do a quick 2 coats on the front and back of your tag. And on the front there are the little lines that you're going to drag your toothpick through. And then also it is etched out where the silverware needs to be placed and the leaves. So here I'm going to go ahead and do silver on the flatware, green on the leaves, and black marker on the word eat. And that is all complete. Now it's time to put the tag together, and we're going to start with the side where the silverware goes, and I am doing a quick dry brush of the brown on both the front and the back. I'm doing a dry fit of where the utensils go and the leaves, just making sure that they fit properly into that little etched out area for each item. I'm going to go ahead and put glue on the back of each piece of flatware and place that first. Once I have those done, I do another dry fit for my green leaves, remove the adhesive backing, and get those pressed into place. Finally, for the word eat, I just put a little glue on the back of the wide part of each letter, press it down, and the tag is complete. So now it's time to get working on our garland. If you want to do a pause on this next part where I show the beads, do so. But right now I'm just making a little needle at the end of the string with a toothpick and a piece of tightly wound painter's tape. But here's where you can pause so you can see the order of the beads that I did. I did 5 courses of beads with 6 in each course. I start with the white, follow it up with a small natural, a checked bead, a large natural, a square bead, and a small natural. And I'll just string them in those order. You can do yours in whatever order you want. Your beads will look similar. If you've got a little bit different ones, just arrange them however you want. But this is how most of the kits will come. So I just take that toothpick end, feed it through the hole of each bead, bring it down to the tassel, and then just string the beads one on top of the other. And I've sped this way up so you can just see what the garland looks like as it starts to take shape. And then once we have all the beads on, then we need to attach our garland to the tag. You're going to keep the string intact for now. You have quite a bit of extra, but you'll cut that out, the extra off later. For now, we're going to leave it intact. I'm going to come through the back of the tag, having the front be the part with the silverware on it. And then I am going to go around the back of the string, pull that tight, and go through the front of the tag through that hole. And that kind of wraps the string around itself to secure it. And I'm just taking off any excess so that bead touches the top of the tag. Once I have that done, I am going to still keep that toothpick on there, and I am going to feed my string up through the first 3 beads until I get to that large bead. I'll string it through there, and then that makes for a perfect place to cut off our excess, leaving a few inches to knot it up and then hide that knot in the big bead. So I'm pulling it tight, and now I am cutting off that excess. I'm going to make one single tie or knot in the right here at the front of the string, and then I'm going to take the string around the 2 pieces around the string in the middle, and I am going to do a double knot. So basically you have the 2 pieces of string wrapped around the center one, if that makes sense. I've got this kind of slowed down so you can see what I'm doing. Then what I do is I get as close as I can, leaving just a small amount of excess, and I snip that off, and then I scooch the beads up excuse me, and I hide the knot within that big bead. The last step is just to take your checked ribbon or whatever ribbon I supply for you, tie that around, and then I just did a single knot there, and I just did an angle cut at the end of each ribbon in case it's frayed. And your garland is complete with both sides. Let's start working on the interchangeable hanging signs that we'll be making for the front of our little house shelf. There are 2. One says made with love, and it's got adhesive parts, and then the other one says we roll together, and that's got a little adhesive heart, and each one has little hangers for it. So for the we roll together, I did the same wood grain look that we did on that little cutting board, and for the made with, we just painted that white. So this we roll together words are engraved in, and if you go over it with that marker, I did that orange base brown again, it does not get inside the letters. So once I have that orange base brown again, I just went over it with the darker brown and aged it up so it would look a little more like wood, and then went over it with the white dry brushing as well to bring out the letters. And that one is done. And then I went and used markers on the made with and the 2 little hearts. Finally, on the heart, one of the hearts, I went and took a little bit of white paint and just went around the edge just to give it a little more definition so it will pop off that dark sign. I did do 2 coats on the white made with love sign, and then I also did my dry brushing technique just like we did on all those other projects. So now it's time to put things together. This little heart for the we roll together has an adhesive backing. So I just peeled that off, put it over on the left hand side, that sign's done with its little brackets. For the Made with Love, that heart came out of the gnome's hat, so it did not have an adhesive backing. However, you can just go ahead and there's a little area etched out for that or outlined. Same thing with the words, they're adhesive. Peel that off, line it up with the little outline on the sign that will be barely visible when you paint. And then same with the word with. And then these two signs are done. You can put their little hooks in them and then they will hang right off that fence, and you can interchange them as you see fit. We will now make the interchangeable window inserts that are going to be at the top portion of the little house. They just pop in and out of the little circle that's at the top. There's a little hole in there to make it easy to pop them in and out. And if you find that they ever fit a little too loose, you can take a little bit of tape or painter's tape and just kind of go across the back and stick it into that hole, and they should rest just fine. But you really shouldn't need any tape or glue to get them in there secure. So I used markers for this project. I used black, brown, silver, and red. You can use whatever paint colors you desire, of course. So I went ahead and used the brown on the window pane, wiped it off a little bit to give it a stained look. I used silver on the circle and the little flatware. I used black on a circle, and I used red on the word yum. Now we just need to put them together. For the first one, I'm taking the silver circle and the little window pane, and I'm putting a little bit of glue on the outside of that window pane, and then just lining it up to that silver circle and pressing. The other one that we need to put together is the silverware on the black circle. The silverware that I did in silver, of course, is adhesive back. So I just removed the adhesive backing and placed it into the center of that circle. And the yum, I didn't attach to anything. I left that one layer, and that's what these look like in the end. It is time to decorate the centerpiece of this kit, the mini house display shelf. And this little shelf goes together quite easily, and all your instructions are included. I used black marker on the roof peak and the circle. I did the house in white with our brown accent, and I used antique wax on all the fence parts. Here I'm just showing you a quick clip of me painting, just like I did before, 2 coats, and will show me distressing it later. I did use the brown antique wax and wipe it off. I did the front and back of all the fence pieces because you can kind of see the back of them when it's on the shelf, and I like it to look good. And I also did paint the back of the sign with the antique wax as well. That's optional, you don't have to. I just chose to do that. Here I am just distressing the white parts of the house, going up and down those lines and around the edges, and then it's time to put everything together. The first thing you want to do is just add the peak of that roof and just a little bit of dots of glue up and down that roof peak, and then just line it up flat against the table and then press it into place. And repeating that process with the circle for the window insert. There is a small spot kind of scored out for you, so you know right where that insert goes. Just line that up, put your glue on, and press it to adhere, and that's ready to go. Now we are going to get to work on assembling the fence base. Do a dry fit first. The slots go in the second from the bottom rung. Basically, you're going to do the sides first, snap on the front, and then it's going to line up and snap right into your house. And everything is kind of pre-done for you. So first I'm going to glue on the sides. I am just taking for all these, I'm putting glue on the lower ends, like on either side of the notch, if you will. And then I'm going to go ahead and do that one. And you just want to make sure all the peaks are facing the same direction up, so you don't have the fence with the peaks facing down. So there I've got my peaks facing up on both sides. Then I'm going to do the front. I will again do the notch, the glue between each notch, and then also do it on the sides, so that will adhere to it, and the slot goes right, that second one from the bottom. And that's all put together. Finally, I'll take the back of the fence part and I will do the glue around each notch on the back and on the back of the side fence pieces and press it into place. And at that point, I'm just going to make sure my glue gets all set and your fence is complete, and we will go to decorating all the pieces and parts in the next video. It's my favorite part of the video. We are going to see all our finished projects and how everything goes together. We will start out, of course, with the centerpiece of this set, which is the little mini house shelf. And I am going to tuck my mini cutting boards into the display shelf. And I'm sorry for saying mini about 5,000 times on this video. I put the gnome in between those two. And then I'm going to go ahead and put one of the hanging signs on the front of the shelf. I'm just attaching the brackets and it slides right on. Remember that this interchanges with the We Roll Together sign. You can have whichever one you want on the front or don't have any, and each one has a set of hanging brackets. Then we have our 3 window inserts. I put the utensil one in. You can interchange those as well. We have the little rolling pin that you can finish or leave unfinished. Your bonus set of utensils, the little tobacco basket, and remember that comes with a stand. And then finally we have our double-sided tag garland with the utensils on one side and each on the other. I'm going to go ahead and show you how I decorated this on a tiered tray myself. And you can just put this on a tray or just have it on an accent shelf or however you want. But I'm going to let the music play. I want to thank you for joining me. Remind you that if you want to purchase the set, the link is down below. It does have limited quantities. And thank you so much for joining me. And do not forget to look for the loon. Have a great day.